Okay, here's how you make homemade whole wheat sourdough bread. You're going to start with 2 teaspoons of table salt, you're going to add 1 cup of dechlorinated water or filtered water. You're going to add 1 cup of starter. I just want to mix this starter up. It's just been sitting overnight, and the liquid on top is it's called liquor, and it just needs to be stirred back in. It's totally fine. So you want a nice stretchy, elasticy starter like that. So you're going to take 1 cup of starter. Okay, that's what you start with. Salt, water, starter. I'm just going to break that up in there, mix in the salt. Okay, so then to make a whole wheat loaf, we're just going to add 1 cup of white flour and 2 cups of brown flour. I'm just going to stir this up. I want it to be it to be a really thick consistency, almost too thick to stir. And when you get it to this point, nice kind of ball, you can either keep stirring it like this, sort of turning it over with the spoon and kneading it a little bit, or you can get your hands right in there. And just knead it a little bit. It doesn't need to be kneaded too much. The yeast actually does most of the work. This just gives it a nice shape. It's not really sticking to my hands at all. It's a really good consistency. Okay, so that's that. Now I would just take this, cover it with some saran wrap, and let it sit and rise for about 8 to 10 hours, depending on how hot it is outside. It's still a little bit cool, wintertime, so I'll probably bake this before I go to bed tonight. And that's that. So then you're going to take the starter that you have. I just took a cup of flour out, so I'm going to replace it with a cup of water. And a cup of flour. This part you don't have to be too precise. It's just giving the starter some more food, keep it happy and active. So I'm just going to kind of I always use a whisk to mix up my starter, because that gives it lots of air, and the more air that you can get in there, the better. The air is what has the yeast in it, and so the more you can kind of mix it up and get air in there, More yeast can happily eat away at your flour. Make those nice little air bubbles in there. So there you've just fed your starter, made a loaf of bread, and we'll come back to this and bake it. And that's that. So once you've mixed up your starter and you've fed it, you want to make sure that you leave it out and let the yeast get active for probably about 2 hours. And you can actually leave it out overnight if you want to. If you leave it out overnight, just make sure you put something underneath it or you put it in your sink. They do have a tendency to get pretty active if you leave them out for a long time, and sometimes they can bubble over and it's a pretty big mess. The other thing is the spoon that you use to mix your bread, don't ever use that spoon to mix your starter. This spoon has some salt on it from the bread, and the salt slows down the yeast and it can actually kill your starter. So that's another reason why I use the whisk, because then I know if I have the whisk, I'm never going to accidentally use this spoon to mix the starter up. So that's it. Okay, so here's the bread in the morning. It's all nice and risen. This is why I don't use a cloth, because if it's a cloth it's going to stick really badly. The plastic comes off pretty easily. So these two here, this one's jalapeno cheddar, this one's the stuffed one that I was making. So you're just going to heavily flour your countertop. You don't want any counter showing underneath. It will stick, and it's a nightmare. Okay, so you're going to flour your hands. You're going to take the bowl, and you're going to flip it almost right upside down, and then you're just going to shove your hand just along the edge just to get it to release from the bowl. You might have to flour your hands a couple of times. And you can see how runny it's gotten overnight. That's why you need to make sure that it's pretty firm when you're mixing it up. Otherwise it'll just run right out of the bowl in the morning. Be impossible to pick up. Okay, so you're going to take that and fold it over as gently as you can. You want to make sure the whole bottom is covered with flour. So I'll do that again with this one here. Just going to fold it right upside down.
Daddy.
Gently shove your hand in there, just right along the side of the bowl. You can feel it pull away as you do it. And the less that you can deflate it, the better of a rise that you're going to get once you put it in the oven. Tobes, what's going on? What's going on? So I preheated the oven to 425 degrees, and I've got my roasting pans in the oven with the lids on. Just wait, Toby. Okay, let's fold that over. See, this one's got some big air bubbles in it. I'm just going to take a little sharp tool and I'm just going to pop them. If you leave them, they just crust, they form a crust really quickly, and then you're going to have this really brittle crust that's going to break off as soon as you take it out of the pot. So, okay, there's your 2 loaves. Now you got to remember the oven's hot. So, there's my roasting pans. I'm going to take the lids off real quick. I'm going to gently lift these up and drop them in there. As much flour on your hands as you can get, because if they stick to your hands, it's a real pain. And then you're going to throw the lids back on. You want to try and do this quickly so you don't let too much of the heat out of the oven. And then 27 minutes. Put your timer on. After 27 minutes, you're going to open take the lids off and cook it for another 11 minutes, and then pull it out and it's done. Okay, so this is midway through. You're just gonna pop the lids off, and they should be nice and risen. Do it quickly so you can get the heat to stay in there, and then another 11 minutes. Okay, so after 11 minutes, there's your bread. Beautiful. Just tip it out. There you go, voila.